just a podcast. It's a situation where just think of it like I'm sitting next to you and we probably have a cup of coffee and we're just having a chat. So we've been introduced and we're getting along fine and we're just talking about things. And I'm trying to get to know you. You're trying to get to know me because we share one common goal, which is Nigeria,
Yes.
this case in point. And obviously we all want the betterment of the country.
Yes.
Right? So the TNN network is set up to help drive or enhance conversations and engagements for the Nigerians in diaspora and outside Nigeria. So the brief history of this is, for a couple of years now, we've been trying to identify specific scenarios that would help conversations that our leaders are having, that our citizens are having, and then that the diaspora are having. But these conversations, they all seem to be happening only behind closed doors. So vis-a-vis, we go to a bar, we have a chat, just like I said, we are here now. You know, we talk all day about Nigeria, we talk about what's good and what's bad, but it's never amplified. So it sits there, it dies there. You know, we in the diaspora go home, we have so much engagement about Nigeria, we come back, we reminisce on what has happened, and then it dies. Some of us go home from here, and we work for 1 or 2 years, we try to adapt, it doesn't work, we come back, we have a meltdown about the situation, that conversation died. So going forward, we thought about it and said, okay, look, we know what's failing in Nigeria, right? There's no point going through the motions of what has failed, what is failing, the leaders are not doing what they're supposed to do. But if we as a collective start engaging individually, how would that bring value to the guy who is not expecting to have value, or who is not expected to know what it is to be a citizen and have his right? How do we come through the back door to enlighten folks? So that's entirely what the TNN is kind of like strategically set up to do, to drive those conversations. You know, so we are not affiliated with any individuals or organizations per se. The power is in the conversation that we want the people to hear. That is why I don't go into the accolades with individuals or past histories and stuff. I just want it to be a situation where we are just having a chat, and then we unlock value. Yeah.
Okay.
So cool. So based on just following up from what we already know, we know what Nigeria is. I know about a lot about you based on what David has told me, and I know you've done a lot in terms of activism. I believe everybody should be active. I believe everybody should be engaged in politics because that defines the mindset of the individuals. I don't know if you are privy to listen to any of our podcasts. We've highlighted that overseas, when you get to 16, 17, some kids get actively involved in politics. You know, the environment brings them into that forefront to enable them engage with their local leaders, their local community leaders. So when that time comes for any kind of election to be put forward, these leaders, are not strangers to these individuals. Now, as you can see, grassroots politics has been an issue that has been driving our conversation for the last 3-4 years. I would like to know from your point of view, before we go into hardcore discussions, if you can give me your own perception of what you think grassroots politics is, because some people just don't know. And my definition might be completely different from yours.
Grassroots politics.
Let's start from there.
You're talking about the men and the women who don't have any direct access to the people in power. Am I clear? Is that what you're asking when you say?
It could be, but it's your narrative I'm going to go with. I'll go with your narrative of what you say grassroots politics is, because we are trying to define a few things.
That's what I define grassroots politics. Those are the people who have no access to people in power. Their voices are not heard. And usually when they elect people in office, they're expecting that person is going to represent them and represent who they are and what they desire from governance. But as you can see, that's not what we are getting. Well, it's improving. You have to excuse me.
No problem.
I left Nigeria as an adult, and I lived out for almost 30 years in the US. And I made a very conscious decision to come back to Nigeria because I realized that there was a problem, that there was a generation of children that were cut off completely from everything, had no idea on how to function in society. And they went about the unemployable youths, they call them, when I came. But let me give you some personal experiences. First of all, I live amongst the grassroots. I don't live in GRA in Benin. I live on Forestry Road, where you have all those shops, the boutiques and stuff. I live in the midst of them. And I enjoy walking to the stores to buy my tin of milk, my coffee, my bread, and I have the opportunity to interact with them on a daily basis. Right. And when you're not living among the grassroots, you can never understand what they're going through. And you see, I listen to a lot of leaders when they say that, oh, they're always coming to my house begging for money. And I said to one day, I said, have you ever bothered to ask what the problem is?
Thank you.
It's probably not about money. There's more to money. I run a foundation today because people couldn't get good health care. When they go to the hospitals, they are seen as nothing. The doctors just throw medicine at them. They bring an injection. I want to give them a shot. They ask what, they shout at them. Are you trying to tell me I don't know my job? The patient has no rights. Yeah. They're terrified. They don't know what you're doing. They don't know what they even have. When they ask you, you're angry. And so we decided to be liaisons between professional healthcare workers and the grassroots. And what do? We intervene. I'm sure you're thinking that I've gone off gear. I'm trying to tell you what grassroots relationship is. You cannot sit somewhere in an office and talk about grassroots. If you're not part of them and you're not working with them to understand what their needs are, then you are completely wasting our time. Yeah. And so we found out that a lot, I have people call me, Mommy, they just said my child has a hole in the heart. And I said, what type of, they don't know. I have to bring the paperwork, and then we have our consultant look at it, and we sit the parent down, and then we explain to them exactly what's going on with their child, right, or with them. Some of them don't get good health care because they don't have the money. Right. And it's not about just not having the money. A lot of them go to hospitals and they don't even diagnose them. They just tell them anything and they begin to give them medication.
Okay. Are we not kind of like talking about the overarching problem within our society?
What I'm trying to tell you is that the leaders because I had part of the conversation yesterday.
Okay.
I did. And what I wanted to tell you was that the leaders we're talking about are products of our community. In other words, it is what we raised. That is what is leading us today. So it is what we mentor our children. That is what our children take to office. If a child is not, if a leader is not honest, then he's probably not lived the honest life since he was a little child. Why? He left it from somewhere. So I don't know how he got to do it. Oh, really? And I would tell you that a lot of parents are not in the home. They're too busy chasing money. They want to be in the company of these so-called leaders or big guys, and they want to be like the Joneses. And they're too busy trying to fight for Ashoibi and all that, and they lose track of what their children are doing. I'm raising three adopted children today, and I look at them and I say, wow, if I wasn't here, I wonder what would be going on right now. Because I see what they do. I'm like, if I wasn't home, God help me. I don't have anyone taking care of them because I don't want the bad influence. I don't want the negotiations of bad deeds. If you tell mommy I did this, then I will tell her you did this. What I want are honest children. I want to raise children who have morals. I want children who have integrity, who are honest. I want them to understand what it means to function within society and how to be able to do the right thing at the right time. I want them to leave legacies, and I wish for them the best in life. And if I'm going to wish that for them, then I should be willing and ready to work hard to make sure that they get there. And it's not just about putting your child in a public school or the best school. It's about making sure your child does the work. It's about making sure your child is functional in class.
Right.
So when we're talking about problems in society, it starts from the home, where we dump our children elsewhere, expecting someone else to raise them and get good results. Or you go get a maid from the village who is a is a total illiterate, and you're asking her to raise your child. What do you think she's teaching your child?
Okay. You know what's exciting about this? Because I was hoping we would have this kind of a semi-explosion towards the end when I ask you a situation that, can you express your ideal success story of Nigeria? That's what one question I was really eager to ask you. And that success story obviously build up from what we have failed and then what we can change, you know? But it looks like you've more or less not answered all of it, because I was still going to talk about that. You've just highlighted what our main problems are in terms of community building, right? Our parents not available for kids, and the kids not knowing who to turn to or whatnot. If we look at what we are seeing from a political point of view, from the grassroots level, that grassroots politics that you that identified before as an issue, are we giving these kids who are more or less, I wouldn't say they've been left alone to struggle, who are more or less not enlightened about what it is to be a politician? You know, fundamentally on the grassroots level, if you say to a kid who doesn't know what politics is, let me put you through X, Y, Z so you understand what leadership is. I don't think we're doing that enough, but some people might disagree. From your point of view, have you seen society coming together to bridge that kind of gap between its own citizens, right? Creating that awareness, political awareness for the guys on the street, and how that can now transgress into a form of leadership that we're aspiring to get to?
How can you have a leader that is not involved in his community? Now, another thing that we did in the US and in the church was to raise children. If you look at when a child is going from what we call secondary school here now to university, one of the things they ask the children for is have you ever been in leadership position? Have you held in the community? Have you done community service? And if the child has, they go to the church or they go to the hospital where they have indeed volunteered their time for free, whether it was for 1 or 2 hours a day, to help someone that is in need. And it all adds up to good works. And those are the kinds of things they take into consideration when they're actually going to give a child scholarship, is your involvement in your community. Our communities in Nigeria are not interested in raising children. If you notice, most of the children don't even have an imagination. Do you know why? A child walks up to you and tries to say something to an adult. Shut up. Yes. Shut up. Sit down. And he's trying to explain to you, but the kitchen is, keep quiet. Yes. Don't you see that I'm talking? They kill the child's will. They kill the child's imagination. At some point, if a child comes and says, oh, see, I built this, get out of here. Is that what your mates are doing? You know, everybody wants their child to be a doctor. Everybody wants their child to be an engineer, but they forget that without the mechanic, your car won't be moving and your car won't be working. Without the people, all those skilled workers that are supposed to be building the society are non-existent, because many parents will not allow their children do what they desire to do. I have a son. Sorry.
Go on.
And the reason I'm probably the way I am is because I had great parents. They were liberal, and both of them were highly educated. Right. And I can remember that every evening for pastime we would sit down and play Scrabbles, or we'll play guess games, or we will have a debate. And we were 6 kids, so my mother would be on one side with 3 kids, and my father would be on one side with 3 kids, and we come up with a topic, and everybody gets to say how they see a particular situation.
That doesn't happen anymore, though.
How?
You know that doesn't happen anymore.
People are busy chasing their Shoibi parties, and it's very sad.
It is.
And then when people say, you need to fix Nigeria, and I ask them, who do you think is supposed to fix Nigeria? I'm a Nigerian. I live, like I said, I lived almost 30 years out in the US, and America taught me something. There are no brick walls. They taught me best practices. They taught me ethics. They taught me how to work and make money honestly. Right. And then after I had spent so much time there and raised my own children, they've all gone through the university, I didn't see any reason why I should still remain in the US. And the reason for even going to US in the first place was to get an education. Then I raised a family. And then we heard about the cult, and I said, okay, we need to have a set of children out who are not tainted. So we need to protect, but we need to go back. And I'll tell you that none of our kids that were born in the U.S. because we never wanted them to say that they were Americans. We wanted them to, when they say, "Where are you born?" "Oh, I was born in Benin." Really? So you understand what I'm saying? And they had a tie here, but the children are not allowed to grow. And I've seen many cases where in fact, this particular case where the young man, as soon as he got his wig and gown and he was called to the bar, he took his photographs with his parents and he handed them the wig and the gown, went in his car and brought out his camera, and he's one of the best photographers today and makes a lot of money doing that. There's so many cases like that.
Yes,
and that is because we're not allowing our children to excel. We want our children to live our own dreams and forgetting that our life is our life and their life is their life. So we were always asked growing up, so what do you want to do? Even if you said, and this was the deal. It didn't matter what you wanted to be in life. We just want you to be the best at it and we want you to do it honestly. Always take it a mile further. Even if you wanted to be a tailor, okay, be a designer. If you wanted to be a gymnast, okay, be the world's greatest gymnast. But understand that you needed to do the work. But what we have today, because of the pressures that parents have put on children, you see the cheating in schools. That's when you say a child goes to school, but the school didn't go through them.
The child.
And when we talk about corruption, our children are being bred into corruption.
100%.
But that's the truth.
I agree.
Because when you have parents who encourage their children to cheat in exams,
right,
or who pay lecturers to give their children grades that they did not deserve, rather than ask the child or find out what the child's problem, why they don't excel, and help the child to solve the problem, they teach the children the easiest ways, which are usually illegal and full of corruption. So they go through a system of corruption. In the 1.5 years I was training unemployable children to employable in Abuja, you'll be amazed about how many children that came through with first class.
I wouldn't be, to be honest, because I'll tell you why. I'm not surprised at all. I have, over the years, I've tried to work with NGOs, right?
Yeah.
But we go to the worst places where we know is really terrible, right? Put these kids in any form of education, and honestly, they excel in so amazing ways. It makes you really wonder. So those are kind of like mind tweaks that make you think.
The talents are there in the rural areas. We miss them because we're too busy sitting in the cities and all the big talk. And like we say, I say a lot of first class. And what this was, what we actually had a test. We did a test. I gave them, simple math, basic math, basic English, teamwork, aptitude test.
Yep.
And you'll be surprised that people couldn't even multiply 4.1 by 4.1 by 2.0.
And these are people that are supposed to be in the institution already.
First class from the university, graduates.
There you go.
They couldn't. Sorry.
No, I was going to say one of my biggest problems I have in terms of keeping up narratives with Nigeria is when defending Nigeria, which I do, I look at the educational system and people that have passed through the system. Based on that, sometimes you can use that to judge the quality of the people coming out of the country. The educational system goes down to university, secondary school. You meet a graduate and you can't really string a sentence together. This has happened not once, not twice, not 3 times.
It was never in class.
He would say he's an engineer. I'll go, okay, come on, let's talk about physics. I have a passion in physics. He has no clue, right?
No idea.
These are all systematic problems that we have. One of the drives that we are trying to unlock in terms of value is, okay, when it comes to politics, which I know is a key subject of yours, how do we now influence, that political leadership? Or rather, how do we influence politics in Nigeria as a collective? I know you're doing your bit, but as a collective, for instance, I've just met you, to be honest with you, I think you're one of the most outstanding people who have led a conversation in terms of, here's a picture, paint what you want, let's converse, right? How would you now bring everything that that you have and say, as a collective, this is how politics is supposed to be? How do we influence that politics in Nigeria?
First of all, if you're talking about the children from the age of 32, they're too much imbibed in what's going on now, and changing their mindset might be a little bit difficult.
Why 32?
I think because I've worked with many of them. I'm in politics not because I desire to hold a political office, but because I desire that I get development for my people in my local government, which is Omon West. And because they are just disenfranchised and sidelined. And when I went there, I realized that much wasn't happening. So this was what it took. I had to get them together, and I said, look, nobody's going to do this for us. We have to work hard and do it for ourselves. And I tell them, I said, if you wait for someone, oh, but they won't. I said, who is not letting you? Yep. And the point is that most people are afraid or terrified to even take a step further or do something different. If you notice, there's a head mentality that goes on. Everybody's doing this. So if I do this, then I will be seen as somebody that has a problem, or I'm trying to act as if I'm better than others. I said, no, but if it's your calling, you need to do it. I don't have hang-ups. I don't believe in hang-ups. And like I said, I don't believe in brick walls. And I lived in a society that taught me that if I do have a brick wall, that I have different ways to get to the other side. But I just have to figure out which is the best. There's more than one way. But if you look at what most of us here, once we have one solution, and when that solution doesn't work, that's it. We're done. We don't know what else to do. And if it happens to be someone that's standing in our way, if you're not a lucky person, you might just get killed, because the only solution they're going to come up with is get rid of the person. But there's more than one way to solve a problem. And that's what I'm teaching these young children. Because I tell them, I say, can you, I had someone try to move my couch out of my house. Right. There was 2 of them that came, and the couch was wider than the door in terms of length. Yeah, but they were trying to take it out this way, and they kept hitting my door. So I asked, so anytime anybody comes to work for me, I'm always around, because I know something's going to break. So by the time they did it the second time, I simply asked him, I said, do you think that are you going to actually break the door to get the chair out? Or would it be simpler if you just turned the chair around so that it will go through? Yeah. You'd be amazed. They were shocked. I mean, it was so simple. And they were actually going to keep hitting. I couldn't understand that part. And then there was a time that I needed them to bring down the tank and replace it. And the guy, luckily for me, the guy walked and said, Ma'am, do you have a table that we can break? And I said, I don't understand. Yeah. That they didn't want to break my soak away, which was not too far from me, because they would drop it. Mm-hmm. And so if there was a table they could use. Yeah. So I said, oh, let me come see what you're doing. And I said, oh, hold on a second. We got a rope. I said, put it through the tank, because there's the opening at the top, and then there's the hole where you put the pipe for it to feed water into your house. So I said, put it through the hole, and then let's do a pulley. So as the rope is going down, you're going to lower the tank, and you're not going to break anything. Yeah. And they did it so effortlessly, and they looked at me. Oh, we learned something today. I said, "Were you really going to break my circle and break my table and break everything?" But we learned that in secondary school. That's simple physics. Using the lever to. But thank you. Yeah. Okay, go on.
No, it's true. I'm just agreeing with you. I'm trying to picture the scenario of how things are really, really fair.
That's what
it goes back to what we're saying. How do we now influence this as a collective? The political side of things is definitely an angle that we know we can influence, especially people who have identified themselves as leaders, which is another crucial thing, because some people don't have that vision about themselves. They have to, they look out for people to give them their own kind of empowerment when they should reach it. Individually, I know you're doing a fantastic job. Just a few searches here and there, I already know what you're about. But, that energy that you have, if, for instance, we have about 50 people like you, your best suggestion in terms of how do we now influence politics in Nigeria, based on the fact that we know grassroots is struggling. Our leaders are struggling, we know that. We cannot run away from that. I'm under the opinion that they need our help. It has come to a point where they need help. It's not a case of, hey, look, let's just keep on insulting and chastising and calling them names. No, there are things that individuals can do or communities can do to help these leaders. Be it they be the worst leaders on earth, it doesn't matter. As long as they've assumed that position, there's a responsibility that they have to deliver. If they cannot meet that, then people should be willing to lend a helping hand. So what kind of influence do you think we should be brewing or willing to start giving back from a political point of view to our communities?
Orientation.
Awesome.
If we don't start to orient the grassroots on how to key into governance and what their role is. For instance, I would tell you that in 2011, I had to do a lot of orientation amongst the traders and the market women. And basically their problem was about voting, about their rights to vote, and the inducement that comes with voting. I would sideline a bit. And what I would do was, I didn't go there and act as if I knew it all. What I would do would be to attend their meetings and sit quietly, because those are the arenas where the discussions about politics are had and the decision on what to do next. Now, after a while of arguing amongst themselves, of course, I usually don't fit in. And when I come in, they notice me. So you'll find an elderly woman will say, madam, you've been sitting here for a while. I mean, we've been arguing. What do you think? And that's the opportunity to help guide them and sort out those hang-ups they have so that they can make the right decision. Now, when they talk about they want to vote for someone, if you notice, we're moving gradually away from money politics.
Yes.
In other words, people may take your money, but they may not necessarily vote for you. We also have the issue of poverty and hunger. And unless you live amongst them, you cannot really understand why someone is going to take 500 naira, to vote. But the truth of the matter, he doesn't have food on his table or in his home. And there are many families like that. And so we can't look down on them or call them names for doing it. What we are saying, like for instance, if you we're in Edo State now, I'm in Edo State, and Edo State is what I know. So I'm going to use the government here today as I see it.
Yeah.
Now I followed Governor Basaki for the last 3.5 years, and I was impressed. I'm a PDP person. He just joined us from the APC. And as a PDP person, if you look through any of my write-ups, you will notice that I never really said anything about his governance. I never challenged it. I never said anything. I also didn't praise him because I didn't want anyone to come back at me and say that I was being anti-party by, liking what he was doing. But I will make comments here and there, but trying to orient people, like when they come, what is he doing? What is it? Is it not the road he did that day? Is it, or things like that? And I say, look, we have a commitment ourselves. When government gives us roads, fixes our roads, and we find that it's sand and all that, there's nothing wrong in us sweeping it. That was what happened in places like the US for very many years until they got road sweepers, the machines that actually did it. They sweep the roads, they kept it clean, they washed it. You understand? As a maintenance. We don't have a maintenance culture. We believe it's always somebody else's duty to do it. It is not my business. I've had to teach the children that live with me that it is your business. All of us work together for the good of all. We work as a team. If one person is down, we all come together to cover for that person until that person is able to come back. That's what we do as a team. Right. And you teach that in your home. Okay, so we have chores. And we rotate, so everybody knows how to do everything. Yeah. So if this person can cook today, the other person is going to do something else, the person do something else, the person cooks tomorrow. So everybody gets to do, and I'm with them, and I do it with them. Right. So, and I teach them. So they know, they don't see it as a thing like, oh, she's just telling me to go and be doing stuff, and everybody's angry that I'm treating them like slaves. But that's not the case. What I'm saying is that you have to be a little more interactive. You cannot beat a child to death because they're not doing something that they didn't even know how to do to begin with. I asked a young man at the age of 32. In fact, it was two of us sitting in my living room one day, and we said, "Go get us a saucer." 5 minutes later, he had not come back. So I looked at my friend. I said, "He didn't know what I said. He doesn't know what a saucer is." He says, "No, but he's a man. He should know it." I said, "He doesn't know what a saucer is."
Yeah.
So I called him. I said, "Come." So when he came and I asked him, I said, "Do you know what a saucer is?" He said, "No." I said, "That very small plate that goes under a teacup. You know, those small, tiny ones." And he came back with a saucer.
Right.
And see, people don't know that there are different placements in terms of cutlery. You know, they see, okay, so you have dessert, you have the dessert cutlery, the dessert knife, the cake knife, this knife. You know, there are different names for different things. To some people, it's just knife. When I came, it was rubber. You want to buy rubber. Rubber meant different things. It meant a bowl. It meant jerry can. It meant, you understand? But rubber was what was used to make it. So you dare tell, "Oh, can I have a jerry can?" And they're staring at you. But when you say rubber, they know what to get. So somewhere we missed it in education, basic education, the primary level.
Yeah.
Here you have a man who is governing Edo State. He has revamped the basic educational system.
That's true.
He's not only improved the structure of the schools, he's actually re-educated the teachers to bring quality academic instructions into the school. He has actually enhanced them. And then look at children who go to school, used to walk to school for miles. Some of the girls will be molested. Children are missing. Children may not even go to school. These are in the rural areas. He's been able to provide buses for them, at least to keep them safe. So they're happy going to school and it's free. And then when they get to school, the environment is conducive. It is actually a classroom. So there's an excitement to learn.
I think that aligns with what you highlighted as orientation as well, in as much as obviously education being the obvious one. But you see, that form of orientation is not necessarily, hey, look, we'll tell you how to do it. There are certain things that any leader, community leader, governor, or whatever can put in place. There are certain structures they can put in place that would aid that orientation. Similar to what the platform that we are in is trying to achieve in terms of, okay, keeping that narrative alive, right? I'm a big fan of Obaseki, right? But when it comes to party affiliation, I don't really have none. I try to look at the individuals from a leadership point of view and say, you're a leader in your field, in your space, how are you thriving and how are you pushing down your integrity? Now, if that is not balanced, then you know that there's a deficit somewhere, right? And then you look at that and say, is there somebody else that can cover those gaps? You know, this is where community bridging comes into place.
Absolutely.
If Obaseki is doing something, or any governor at all is doing something excellent, he can't do everything. You know, there's a situation where people have to step up and enhance certain engagements that would align with the progress that the individual is trying to drive. What we are seeing, or rather what is failing, is that orientation that you hinted on. Is very vital, and I'm kind of glad you said that, because if people like us are not voicing out these rights and these wrongs, there is no way that the woman or the little boy on the street would know that this is wrong or this is right. That is when the leader is failing now. They wouldn't have a clue, because from their point of view, it would be business as usual. I remember growing up, before I go into the ideal success stories in Nigeria, please, I still remember vividly when if there was a pothole on Forestry, for instance, or Mission Road, it used to be announced. You know, on our way to primary school, I went to a Moulton primary school in Benin, and it used to be announced in the car that there's a pothole somewhere in Mission Road. The driver should be aware to navigate that. The reason why I remember that, because I thought about the process that made that announcement. So somebody has seen the pothole, they've called the local council and said, that's the problem. You know, somebody might be injured. Anybody from the council has said, you need to announce that because it's a risk factor. So to prevent people from hurting themselves and going. So there's a whole structure around that announcement.
Absolutely.
It has always stayed with me. So now you see a situation where a young boy in a modern primary school now, as we speak, is never going to get that kind of situation. He's not going to get it. But there are other things that we as a community can do to highlight failures through different mediums to say, you know what, hey, look, that project that this guy is doing, please don't mess it up because it's really good. Now the young boy understands that, okay, when he gets to 2040, that project that they were talking about, he can leverage off that, right? We
Okay.
don't seem to be having that kind of leadership enhancement programs. Uh, this is why platforms like this, and I'm really, really glad you're here, because a voice to say, hey, look, keep that narrative going, keep the hope alive, keep the conversation driving. It can build into a success story, right? It will lead us to our next engagement now, which is, okay, from your point of view, you said something initially that you made a decision to come back from America. Now, I know
Yes.
you worked in certain sectors in America, but that decision, how do you now align it with the perceived success that you would call the Nigerian success story? Because you want success, it's obvious, right? But what is that perceived success based on the decision that you made to come back? Because that makes it personalized to you.
I'm very excited. I do not regret one day for coming back home.
Mm-hmm.
And like I tell my friends, you all need to come back so that we can build this country. If it's the last thing we can do in order to raise the next generation, we're aging, whether we like it or not. And just as we were able to take care of our parents, we want the next generation to do the same thing. I tell them, I say, we've stayed away too long, and I think we were the ones who created that void, because we were not around to pass on the knowledge and information that we had. We left a vacuum.
We
And
have the
as you
internet
can
now.
see, huh? I didn't hear you.
We have the internet now.
Luckily, but it takes a lot of work. You have to actually interact one-on-one and be in the community for anything to actually work. No one can do that for us. And I would tell you that it's been a lot of joy for me to see the results that we've gotten, having come back and interacted with a lot of the youths and even the younger generation that are coming up now, because we want to catch them young. We need to right the wrongs. And as you know, it takes 20 years to correct anything that goes wrong. So we want to make sure that we plant the seeds. We want to catch them young. We want to make sure we get our youths off the roads. And this was another way we were able to do that in our community here, was when the Edo jobs came up.
Right.
I had to walk around both in Oredo and in Oman West to tell them that it was not a party thing, it was a government thing. And anybody who needed a job should go and register at the council. And they did. And today, they all are working in their various fields, and they are off the streets. They're able to sustain themselves and their families. That's the beginning of cleaning up the streets, or even bringing anything that is viable. And because when there's peace, that's when businesses come into your area. For that area, nobody they disturb you. That's what they will say. And then we build on that, because then the landlords now are able to make money. That means our economy is growing in our small community. And then you now find that the family is more stable. You find them more stable. They're also not available for being thugs at the time of politics. Like we tell them that, and like I said, until you walked in a man's shoes, you don't realize what he's going through to be able to do what he's doing. And I tell them we also need to set up social work, because there are a lot of people who have gone through very traumatic experiences that need counseling. It's not just about throwing money at them. They need to be spoken to. They need to feel that there's someone there to hear them. They have to have, and they have to have a voice of some sort. And we're hoping that with this generation, with what we've done so far, that in the next 2 years, a lot of things would have sorted itself out. I won't see much of what we see now. So politically, a lot of the young men are aware now. A lot of them are aware now, and that's why I see they can produce videos that say, "Don't call me to be a thug for you. Why don't you use your son?" I don't know if you see those videos.
Yeah, of course. I mean,
that's their awareness. They've gotten to realize that they don't need to, because like I tell them, you want to be a taxi driver, so what? I said, it is what you do with your time. I want to be, so someone say, "Oh, you're not ashamed of yourself, you're an Uber driver." I'm like, but I said, "Oh, you know what? I'm really proud of you, you're an Uber driver." I said, because at least I know you're doing your work honestly and legally, and you're able to sustain yourself and your dependents. You see the difference?
That is a success story. You know, this is what I'm trying to paint. I mean, someone spoke to me yesterday after we had a podcast and said, "Hey, look, okay, this platform you guys are working on, what is going to keep it going? Why wouldn't you just go like somebody else?" I said, "Well, like others." I said, "The issue is, or rather, the key point is the platform for anybody to express their own success story." Yeah. So there's no theme. The thing is, if we keep the conversation going, I'm speaking to you now. There's two things I've unlocked from you that, you know, I totally align with. And I know I'm having a conversation about somebody else in about 3 weeks about social work, right? So she's a healthcare worker. And we went through why that is required within our community. We have a lot of religious people. We have a lot of spiritual people, but we don't have people who dig into the psyche of a traumatized citizen to say, look, remove religion, let's deal with you because you have some issues. You know, it might be abuse at home, it might be whatever, it might be just depression at a young age, but we need to know what it is. If you don't have a social worker, if you don't have someone who's actually looking out for you from a leadership point of view or community point of view, then you're going to have flaws in the system. You're going to have flaws. You're going to come out with people without value, people who are highly depressed or, you know, prone to all kinds of
We have
things.
a lot of them. And let
So,
me tell you, truthfully, we have a lot of depressed people, not only just among the masses, but at all levels. And I've had the opportunity to interact with many of them because they've either heard me talking to someone about a particular situation, you know, like in gisting, like we're pretty much talking right now.
yeah,
And then when I'm walking towards my car, they'll walk up to me and say, "Ma'am, you know, I heard you talking about this.
exactly.
I kind of like have the same issue. Can you help me?"
Exactly.
I don't know if you understand.
No,
So I
I
take the time.
completely understand.
Yes. Okay.
You know,
And then we also have the like we have a young man that we're treating. He has a leg ulcer, and it was a leg ulcer that generated from a car accident.
right.
It was a small injury that was totally mismanaged and became this full blown thing. He's depressed. He can't get care. It's not that the care is not available, but what I've seen before a lot of the changes going on now and a lot of the retrainings that we're seeing now is
Yeah.
that when a person goes to the hospital, you're being abused. You know, you're being abused. I've seen nurses beat up patients before, and I'm like, I'm sorry, I don't understand what this picture is about because
Exactly.
this person is sick, and
Yep.
oh, he can't pay his bill. I said, so how does beating up a person
Like that.
help him pay his bill or her bill at this point? You understand what I'm saying?
It
I
goes
mean, you
back to
need to calm
orientation.
down.
Yeah.
Yes. So he's depressed. At some point, he got thrown out of his one room he was able to afford. He's lost his job by this time. He's sleeping on the corridor and it's cold. He's hungry. He can't make money to feed. And he was referred to us by the church. And the first thing we had to do was to first get him in a form that we can reintegrate him back into society and become useful to himself.
Right.
We don't want him to be begging on the streets. That's one thing we didn't want. So for 1 week straight, we treated him until his leg stabilized. And then at the same time, because he didn't have anywhere to go, we had to wash all his clothes and iron them, disinfect them, and we had to feed him because we're giving him very strong medication, antibiotics and stuff like that, as well as
When you say we,
vitamins.
what do you mean when you say we? Are you doing this based on a company level, or do you own something that caters
We
for the
I'm
community,
the
or just
chairman.
your free will?
No. I'm the chairman board of trustees for a foundation,
Okay, cool.
and we're on the streets all the time.
Okay,
And we work mostly with the church because the church gets them,
yeah,
and so anyone that needs any help that we can offer, they'll send them our way. So our thing was to stabilize him. Today, his leg ulcer is completely gone. He's working. If you see him, he's the happiest person. He was sick the other day. He was able to go to the hospital and get admitted and get treatment because he wasn't smelling, he wasn't filthy, he was not a madman. He needed help, but we don't see those things.
no,
And while we're treating, we also talk to them. You know, how you doing today? What's going on? And he would tell us, oh, this happened, that happened. You know, and that helped because wellness is holistic. It's mental, physical, emotional.
yep,
You know, and everything.
everything.
So you can't be treating one part and he's not going
Or
to
the
get
other.
better.
It's the
Yeah.
same.
So
It's the same approach. It's a
Yes.
society problem. It's holistic.
Absolutely. That's what I'm trying to tell you.
It's
You
true.
can't start trying to fix one area
And
and
ignore
leave
the
all
others.
of it. It's a
Nah,
domino effect.
it's impossible. It's impossible. I mean, like, this guy you spoke about now is one case out of millions, and we know that in Nigeria,
I
one
know.
case out of millions. The key thing that we're always looking at is, okay, we know Nigeria can be successful.
Yes.
We know for a fact that there's huge potential there, right? We've identified what is failing. We've identified how decisions can lead to leadership engagements. We've identified some certain failures, but, just to wrap things up as we're getting along, your idea of success now, for instance, right? The hope that brought you to Nigeria, the drive that keeps you going, surely you have a vision for the country, even if it's a vision that you know is going to be for your children's children, but you're kicking off that vision now. Is it okay to define that vision for us so at least we can see and maybe tap into it?
What better vision than to see a society that is balanced, a society that is well. Every society always has the good, bad, and the ugly. But I am really proud and I'm happy I returned home because I've seen the drastic change from the time that I came to what it is now. I have, and I tell you, every day it gets better. So I always tell those that are still out, I say, look, we need to come in and put in our own quarter. You need to bring in your experience to help in training a lot of these people before we leave the scene or become retired. I said, because if we don't do it, then we would have failed in passing on the knowledge that we have. We can't spend our time building other societies. We've learned, we've built. Come on, build yours. This is your home. Come back.
Okay. I felt like that was a direct message to me, but
no.
But I'll tell you, I'm always at home. I'm always coming home like every 2 years. But the truth of the matter is, you said something again that is highly valuable. You want to see a well-balanced society, right? If we split those two words, a well and balanced, right? If we look at the balance side of things, we know for a fact that we're tipping scales endlessly on both ways. We're misaligned completely, but we're trying to align that, right? Stuff like this happening. The reason why we are kind of unique in our delivery is because we want to make sure that the voice is not centered around the individual or the organization, whatever. It's the people. The conversation is key, right?
It must be.
It must be. That's what makes it
new.
It
must be about the people.
It must be. It must be. And there's a lot of commercial accolades attached to certain outlets that wouldn't enable them say certain things, or partisan politics that wouldn't make them express certain views, right? No, that has to change, right? We have all the platform. The brilliant thing about, like I hinted on the internet before when I said we have the internet, what I was trying to align with that is, look at what has happened to us now in terms of COVID, right?
Right.
Everybody has been transformed. There's an acceleration that has happened where if you went online before, regardless of who you are, you have to be online to engage on a level.
Yes.
So because we don't know how long that is going to last, so it's a good opportunity to harness that space, and see what value you can unlock from that. So maybe my final question to you is, there's a lot of youngsters out there who are using their mobile phones and using all kinds of platform and engagement, right? How would you define a progress, or rather a progressive situation for them based on how they're engaging with their devices? We could say stay away from this, that, but because you have worked with communities, you've worked with these individuals, you know their mindset, is there an advice you can say, hey, look, this is what you ought to be doing with your time once you have that device on your hand, because there are channels out there that can aid you? What would be your take on that?
Well, what we've been doing is that, for instance, I'll say a young man on the street, I say, oh, you have a really nice phone. Do you get information? Are you working? I said, your phone is so expensive. I had a phone this expensive. I'll be making money with it because there's so much you can do. And I think what was tripping was that I opened up a platform called Information is Power. And I would give them my number and I'd say, oh, you can find me on WhatsApp. And on Information is Power, we post jobs from the federal government, jobs from the state. Because we never hear anything that's going on. I say, you never know if you're not involved.
Exactly.
And the next thing is, we now encourage, and then they'll come back and say, we saw this job, we think we can do it, but we're afraid because we don't know anybody there. And I always encourage, why don't you apply first and see what happens?
Yes.
And I had this one family where all of them applied and they all got jobs. And I don't see anybody anymore. But what I'm saying is that when you're telling someone not to do, to use their time well, you must also be there to guide them on what they should be doing. Just like when I asked my young 19-year-old adopted daughter today, and I asked her a question, do you know who Sherlock Holmes is? Because we're watching a Sherlock Holmes movie. And she says, no. I said, oh my God, the world is in your hand. You have this beautiful phone with Google on it. You Google Sherlock Holmes. There's no, in other words, there's nothing like I don't know, because the world is at your fingertips. So when you teach your children how to use those devices correctly, and for me, I don't say, oh, don't be on Facebook, don't be on Twitter, don't be. No. What I do is to teach them how to use it correctly, what kind of engagements they should be involved in. I spend time talking to my daughter about predators and stuff like that. My son's the same thing. So they know what to look up. Security. So when you're talking about teaching, telling a child not to do one thing, you have to replace it with another. So what are you replacing it with? You have to replace it with good information.
That's key. You said information is power. Do you know why I was shaking my head? Because some people confuse that with knowledge being power. The old narrative was knowledge is power. But if knowledge is not deciphered and broken down into information, it's just data. It's just nonsense. Yes. But when it becomes information, that's where the power is. And you hit it right there on the head. Because that's part of our mantra here. We're trying to make sure we drive that conversation, which is informative, because we know that's where the power is. The power to engage, to inform people that, look, you can talk about issues without being worried. You can actually say what it is. It's okay.
Absolutely. It's okay.
Exactly. It doesn't matter if you're 12 years old or 20 years old, going back to what you were saying, because we have that bias that if you're 20 years or 2 years older than somebody, you have to put a respect barrier there before you engage on certain things. Well, not necessarily. You can have an old man who is an idiot and a 13-year-old girl who's exceptionally smart.
Exactly. I learn every day. I learn every day. I learn from my 9-year-old. I tell them, and because they can talk to me about anything, I can't lose my children. Because if they have any problems or any fears, they can come to me and say, Mommy, this, that. And like I tell them, no matter how bad it is, I'm the person you're supposed to be talking to. Because if my children are not talking to me, then they must be talking to someone else.
Somebody else. Thank
and,
you.
And if they fall into the wrong hands, then I'm in trouble. So if you don't open the doors for your, we're not saying, people think when your children talk to you is disrespectful. No. Your child can still call you auntie or mom and call you an idiot. Your child can, but there are children who will call you by your first name and are totally respectful of you. It is what you demand. It is how you encourage them or tell them how you want to build the relationships. I told my daughter, you're going to talk to me. We're going to talk. I'm going to ask you every day. I say, you're 19. Are you dating? And she said she'll be bashful. Oh, no, Mom. I said, but it's okay. I don't want you to hide. I want you to bring him home so I can see him, because then I can also talk with him. I can also educate him on what relationships are. And that relationships doesn't have to be about this. You can form bonds. And like I told her, you must be friends.
Right.
First, you must know who you're with. And I should know who your friends are. And when I go out, I tell you, because I want you to tell me when you're going out. But the trick that I played on my kids when they were much younger was that I would say, oh, I gave them a phone. I said, rather than me call to check on them, and then they get angry that I'm checking on them all the time. I say, oh, why don't you guys check on me to see if I'm okay?
I do that already. That's excellent.
So they call me.
Brilliant.
Mom, I want to see how you're doing. And at the end of the day, I know they're fine.
That's exactly what it is.
So
you can see the alignment here with what we are trying to do. The podcast series is centered around ensuring that we drive these conversations forward into coming up with a new definition of a new Nigerian. Nothing wrong with the old Nigerian. It's just a case of, we know that the mindset is changing in so many people. Any kind of change brings about something new. That thing that is going to come out new might be a discussion like some of the stuff you said today. There's some things that I've not heard a few Nigerians say. So to me, that's new. So we can highlight that and say, hey, look, this is a new thinking. It was thought up by a Nigerian. So park it in your bus. Later, go and revisit it, because you're going to get something new from it. So I would like to use that as probably just to wrap up our conversation. And thank you very much for the opportunity to engage with you. I mean, there's so much points and so much value that you've unlocked. I was doing a bit of jotting down and writing. Obviously, we've recorded this and I would play it back and get some value from it and try and kick the narrative to say, look, this is where we find value. We find value in rotation. We find value in assuring that we have a lot of social workers available to help the needy. And most importantly, we understand that information is power, right? Yes, this is absolutely. All coming from you, from an hour conversation. Imagine if we're conversing for 1 year, you know? We'll have enough juice to drive leadership templates. This is the whole point, right? Yes. So I thank you very, very much. Thank you, we really hope to see you in the weekly ones. You know, now that you know what the format is, it is not a set plan or a meeting. It's a case of the body's in there. You sit down. We had a lady in here yesterday. She popped in and she sent me a message today saying, next week, I want you to talk about education. I said, okay, we will talk about education. So that's what we're going to do next week because she said so. So it's that's how we evolve, right? I hope you had a great time because you know I would like to continue, but I'm going to jump onto the next guy.
All right. So I'll see you next week.
Oh yeah, that would be great. Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing you there. Right?
All right.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Have a good day. Thanks.